Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that frankly feels like a modern epidemic, the rapidly shrinking attention spans of our kids, our students, and if we're being totally honest with ourselves, our own attention spans too. More and more kids are finding it just incredibly difficult to focus. It's impacting their behavior, their learning, and literally even their ability to sit through a simple family meal. If you've been feeling frustrated by this, believe me, you are not alone. But here's the good news. The latest neuroscience actually shows us exactly what's going wrong in the developing brain, and it reveals some surprisingly simple strategies to fix it before it's too late.
Now this right here, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It is a very real-world frustration that parents and educators face every single day. Why can a child seemingly lock in and scroll endlessly through short-form videos for 3 hours straight, but they completely fall apart when you ask them to focus on a textbook or a chore for just 15 minutes? It really makes it feel like they're just choosing to be difficult, but let's reframe this for a second. It's not a lack of willpower. It's actually neuroscience. Their brains are reacting exactly as they've been trained to react by their environment.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The modern focus crisis. 2. Brain invaders, screens, and stress. 3. Rebuilding the focus foundation. 4. Focus hacks that actually work. And 5. Achieving the flow state. And just by providing this predictable roadmap right off the bat that actually calms the brain's alarm system, which completely primes you to absorb and learn this information.
All right, Section 1, Brain Invaders, Screens and Stress. Let's get a bit serious for a second and look at the real diagnosis here, because there are invisible culprits hijacking the developing brain.
So, consider a stressed brain. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala, and it acts as our built-in alarm system. When it gets activated, it triggers the fight, flight, or freeze response. It's basically telling the body, hey, pay attention to threats right now. And when this happens, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for deep focus and thinking, literally switches off. It gets completely overridden. Now you might be wondering, well, my child isn't in actual danger, but the amygdala doesn't need a physical threat, mere unpredictability is enough. A chaotic, unpredictable day keeps a child's brain constantly scanning for the next change. But contrast that with a safe brain. When a child has a predictable daily routine, the amygdala stays quiet. The prefrontal cortex comes back online, allowing them to focus on the present moment. Routine literally tells the brain it's safe to concentrate. Now, we absolutely have to talk about the elephant in the room, screens and dopamine. Dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter, and your brain seeks it out like a heat-seeking missile. Short-form content gives the brain an absolute feast of effortless, instant dopamine. Every single swipe is a new joke or a cute animal. It hijacks the brain's baseline, making normal, effort-heavy tasks like studying feel excruciatingly slow and unrewarding by comparison. But it actually gets scarier. Dr. John Hutton led a study using MRI scans on toddlers aged 3 to 5. He found that kids with higher screen use actually had less mature white matter organization in the specific areas of the brain associated with attention and memory. Excessive screen time is physically changing the architecture of developing brains during their most critical years.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is 8,300. That's the staggering number of children aged 9 to 10 whose brain scans were analyzed in a major 2022 study by Xing Wang and colleagues. They were looking at sleep. They compared kids getting more than 9 hours of sleep to those getting less than 9 hours. And the kids getting less than 9 hours actually had a smaller volume of gray matter in the areas of the brain linked to attention, memory, and impulse control. And those physical brain differences, they were still present 2 full years later. Chronic sleep deprivation physically alters the brain's structure for focus.
And if that wasn't shocking enough, check this out. 40. According to research by Gruber and colleagues, if a child is sleep-deprived by just 40 minutes less than their usual amount, they begin to present with symptoms that look almost exactly identical to ADHD. Irritability, lack of impulse control, total inability to concentrate. The prefrontal cortex is incredibly dependent on sleep. But here's the amazing news. When those kids got their 40 minutes of sleep back, the ADHD-like symptoms just vanished.
Which brings us to Section 2, Rebuilding the Focus Foundation. It's time to pivot to the lifestyle antidotes and empower you with the first set of real solutions to heal the brain. Here is your foundational blueprint for sleep, based directly on the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. Toddlers need 11 to 14 hours, preschoolers need 10 to 13, and kids aged 6 to 12 need 9 to 12 hours every 24 hours. So how do you really know if your child is hitting their specific target within these ranges? Well, the ultimate indicator is how they wake up. If they wake up fairly easily in the morning and function well during the day, they are getting enough. If they're hard to drag out of bed, grumpy, or groggy, you likely need to roll that bedtime back slightly to protect their developing prefrontal cortex. Our second foundational fix is resetting the dopamine baseline. Right now, thanks to constant digital stimulation, that baseline is way too high. So we need to introduce a daily mini dopamine detox. We're talking just 15 minutes a day of complete, unstructured boredom. No phone, no music, no screens whatsoever, just sitting, staring at a wall, or maybe going for a walk with just your thoughts. Initially, this is going to feel agonizing because the brain will scream for its usual dopamine hits, kind of like a withdrawal. But after just a week of this, the brain's baseline lowers. It gets starved of the extreme highs, which means suddenly the smaller dopamine hits from reading a book or finishing a homework problem begin to register as deeply satisfying once again.
All right, let's pick up the pace. Section 3, focus hacks that actually work. We're moving from foundational lifestyle changes into acute, ADHD-friendly study hacks.
Hack number 1 is box breathing. And look, this isn't mystical fluff. A study in Cell Reports Medicine actually proved that structured breathing reduces physiological arousal. It literally gets the brain out of that panicked, wandering state so it can actually absorb material. Let's just do it together right now. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale smoothly. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold those lungs empty. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do that a few times before sitting down to study, and you will physically feel your mind stop racing like a headless chicken.
Hack number 2 requires a little bit of tough love. Banish that phone. Out of sight, out of mind. Seriously, if your phone is on the desk lighting up, your brain is constantly anticipating dopamine, splitting your focus. Put it in another room. If you're studying on a computer, use tools like the Chrome extension Newsfeed Eradicator. It replaces the most addictive parts of social media, the endless feeds, with an inspiring quote. You must curate a bulletproof, distraction-free physical zone. Face a blank wall if you have to. Clear out the visual clutter entirely. Next up, we have a rapid-fire toolkit. Remember, the brain is a muscle. It needs training. Start with the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of intense focus, followed by a 5-minute break. Your brain absolutely loves finite countdowns. Next, introduce controlled stimulation. Use a fidget toy or white noise, but absolutely no music with lyrics, as your brain literally cannot process words and study material at the same time. Also, set specific short-term goals with fake deadlines. Don't just say, I'll study math. Say, I will finish 5 math problems by 6 p.m. That artificial time crunch pushes right through procrastination. Finally, get physical. Read out loud while pacing around the room to force your brain onto high alert. Or ditch the tiny notebook for a giant whiteboard. Standing up and organizing chaotic thoughts on a big canvas, maybe using some colored pens, provides just enough stimulation to keep a wandering brain fully engaged.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, achieving the flow state. This is the absolute pinnacle of focus, where studying turns from an obligation into genuine curiosity.
Psychologists define the flow state as an altered state of consciousness. When you're in flow, you are so deeply, effortlessly engaged in a task that time just seems to completely disappear. You feel a sense of oneness with what you're doing, and all those anxious feelings of self-judgment or worry, they just vanish. It is incredible. And brain imaging actually backs this up, showing unique, optimized neural activity in regions related to self-awareness and attention during these exact periods of peak performance. And this brilliantly illustrates how finding that flow state is all about balance. If a task is completely below your skill level, it's too easy. You get bored, and your brain starts looking for distractions. On the flip side, if the task is way beyond your current skill level, it's too hard. You get frustrated and just give up. Finding flow is honestly like playing the classic game of Tetris. As you get better, the blocks fall faster, perfectly keeping the challenge level match with your increasing skill. You need to adjust your study tasks to sit right in that sweet spot of being challenging, but totally conquerable.
So how do we actively invite this flow state? First, change the narrative. Treat textbooks like treasure maps that hold information that could literally change how you see the world. Intrinsic motivation is key here. Next, break massive tasks into small, specific segments. Give your brain moment-to-moment feedback. Put a physical checkmark next to every paragraph you master to trigger that little dopamine hit. But here is the most crucial warning. Don't overthink it. If you sit down and aggressively stress about reaching flow right now, that very distraction will completely prevent you from finding it. Just set up the environment, start the task, and let it happen.
I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. For way too long, we've looked at a child who can't focus, or maybe even looked at ourselves, and just assumed it was a character flaw, laziness, a lack of willpower. But what if distraction is just a biological cry for help? What if it's really just a brain overwhelmed by digital dopamine, starved of sleep, and desperately begging for the right environment, the right routine, and the right level of challenge to finally fall into its natural flow? The brain isn't broken, it's just been hijacked. By lowering that dopamine baseline, protecting sleep, and using the right hacks, absolutely anyone can take back control of their focus and ultimately their future. Thanks so much for watching.